Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video. And today I thought I would do a video that has been requested once or twice on my channel and make a video about how I read as much as I do. So I would say I read quite a lot. There are people on BookTube who certainly read more than me, and my reading also varies quite a lot from month to month, but I probably read between 10 and 20 books a month. I don't think I've ever read more than 20 books in a month. I don't usually read less than 10. It often sits around the kind of 12 to 15 mark, depending. But obviously, while that is not as many books as many people on BookTube do read, I do appreciate that that is quite a lot and it feels like quite a lot, so I thought I would talk about how I end up reading as much as I do. One reason that I read a lot is that I read on my commute to and from work. Like many people who work in London, I have an hour commute into work and an hour commute back from work, which means that every week, Monday to Friday, I have 2 hours a day that are dedicated to reading, in which I do nothing else. I only read on my commute. I never listen to music, I never watch anything, I just read. And so that is 2 hours a day that are timetabled into my day, as it were, where I read and do nothing else. And that is one of the main reasons, I would say, why I read a lot. Another reason why I manage to read a lot is the fact that I listen to lots of audiobooks. I would say I usually listen to 2 audiobooks a month, maybe 3, maybe 1, depending on the length of the audiobook. I really love listening to audiobooks. I find it a really enjoyable way to read. I usually listen to audiobooks on like 1.15 or 1.2 speed, depending on the book and how fast the narrator talks. But so that does mean that I listen to audiobooks slightly faster than the audiobook is supposed to be listened to, as it were. But I love audiobooks for meaning that you can be like reading at all times, pretty much, depending on what you're doing. So I listen to audiobooks while I'm at the gym, I listen to audiobooks while I'm like walking to and from or between stations on my way to work, or when I'm like out and about while I'm like washing up or doing housework. I listen to audiobooks if I'm ever like on the bus anywhere, because I can't read on buses because I get car sick. Or like if I go to the supermarket to buy vegetables or whatever, I will walk around the supermarket with my basket with my headphones in, listening to an audiobook. I just listen to audiobooks quite a lot, and I also don't mind listening to audiobooks in like 10-minute segments at all. If I have a 10-minute walk somewhere, I will listen to an audiobook in that 10-minute walk. Basically any task I can do where I can be listening to an audiobook, I will be listening to an audiobook. Also, me and Nick do listen to audiobooks together sometimes, which is like a social form of reading, I suppose. So that probably also increases my like audiobook listening time. Another thing I would say that helps me read a lot is that I always have a book in my bag. I usually have 2 books in my bag at least, or a book and my Kindle, so that if I finish one book I can immediately start another. And I'm not very precious about like reading a chapter and getting to the end of a chapter and then finishing. Like if I can get to the end of a chapter, great, but I'm not someone who minds stopping in the middle of a chapter at the end of a paragraph. The same with an audiobook, like I can listen to 5 minutes at a time, and I do think that means that I get much more reading done, because I don't just like, oh, I'm 1 stop before my tube stop and I finished a chapter. So I will stop, I carry on reading, and then I like stand on the escalator going up on the tube still reading my book. I'm one of those people who will like read till the last minute possible. So I think that does help, having a book with me at all times, reading whenever I have a spare minute. If I'm like waiting for a train or something, I'll be listening to an audiobook or reading a book. Another thing I think helps me read lots of books is that I am usually reading multiple books at once. I would say I'm usually reading at least 3 books at once. I usually have an audiobook on the go, I have a physical book of my choice on the go, and I have a workbook that I'm reading for work on the go. Not always, but most of the time I would say I have a book that I'm reading for work. And I usually try and read like the book I'm reading for work on the way into work and the book I'm reading for fun on the way home from work, to like give that separation. But often I will have 4 books on the go, and I'll have 2 reading for pleasure books, like a classic and a contemporary, which I often find quite enjoyable, because especially because classics are quite long, sometimes it can feel like it's taking you a really, really long time to read that one book, whereas if you've got another book on the go at the same time, then you can alternate between them depending on what fits your mood. Stuff like, I really would have struggled to read War and Peace if I hadn't read lots of other books alongside it. It took me like 3 months to read War and Peace, but I also read like 30 books at the same time as while I was reading War and Peace, because I didn't want to just dedicate myself to War and Peace and nothing else for a month, which in general I think helps me read faster because there's more kind of variation and you can kind of suit your mood, I suppose. Another reason why I read quite a lot is because I do read stuff for work. I work in publishing, so I do have to read things for work. I wouldn't say I do very much of my reading for work during office hours, so that isn't why I read more, but because I do have to do some reading for work, that therefore probably increases the amount I read. especially I've noticed since I started working in fiction rather than non-fiction, I thought I would end up reading less, but I actually read more because I'm reading more books for work, but I then feel like I have to compensate and read even more books like in my spare time, which doesn't make any sense, but you know. Another reason why I would say I read a lot is because I do make quite a lot of time for it. Obviously, like I said, I have 2 hours a day on my commute, but I also make a lot of other time to read if I can in my evenings or my weekends. And one of the reasons why my wrap-ups vary so much from like 10 books to 20 books is because some months I'm much busier than others, and don't have as much time to read, and some months I do have more time to read. And in general, I do think like I have lots of hobbies, but most of my hobbies are book related, like booktube or writing. And I do have some non-book related hobbies, like I play the piano, but it doesn't take up much time in my life. I do enjoy watching TV and films, but I don't watch them very often. I do enjoy TV whenever I watch it, but I'm someone, I don't enjoy watching TV on my own, basically. So if I'm watching TV or films with people, I will really enjoy it, but I just can't sit still for that long, which sounds silly because I can reading a book, but it's not the same when you have pages to turn. But I just don't really enjoy watching TV on my own very much, which means if I'm on my own, the thing I will be doing is reading, unless I am making booktube videos and editing them or writing. But I write in the morning, so that's like dedicated writing time. And then booktube tends to be done on the weekends, in terms of filming and editing, and therefore like weekday evenings I read, and that's just what I do, I suppose. So I guess, yeah, I do make a lot of time for reading outside of my commute. Aside from those things, I would also say just I am quite a fast reader, and I'm quite lucky to be quite a fast reader. I'm very glad I'm a fast reader because I think I would struggle to work in editorial and publishing in the job that I do if I wasn't a fast reader, because sometimes you do need to read books quite quickly. But I am lucky to be quite a quick reader. So I would say, depending on the book I'm reading, if I'm reading a contemporary book, I can probably read 80 to 100 pages an hour. If I'm reading a classic, probably like 60 to 70 pages an hour. If I'm reading a non-fiction, probably more like 40 to 50 pages an hour. So for example, recently on holiday I took with me these two books. This is The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton. I discovered that I could read 90 pages an hour of this, and this is Eavesdropping on Jane Austen's England by Roy Leslie Adkins, which is a non-fiction book, and I discovered I could read 45 pages an hour. And if you want to know why I know that, it's because I time myself, which is weird. I think it's weird. I don't know if anyone else does this, and I would like to know if anyone else does this. But if I have an hour spare to read, I will write down the time and what page I'm on, and then an hour later I'll write down what page I'm on. I'll then work out how many pages I read in the hour, and then I'll work out like from how far through the book I am, how long I have to go in the book, and I'll work out how many hours I have left to read. And I started doing this, like originally I wasn't writing it down, I was just like noting to myself on my commute, okay, so I read 70 pages in on my commute, so I then have like 5 more commutes and then I'll have finished this book. But then I started getting like a little bit more obsessive and writing it down, and I don't like keep a record of it, I just like make a note on my phone so that I can work out how long I have left in the book, which probably does make me read more. I don't think it necessarily makes me read faster because I'm like working to a time limit. I hope that isn't how my brain works, but it does make me like calculate how much longer I have in a book quite early on, and therefore I'll be like aware of kind of vaguely when I want to finish it maybe, and therefore how much time I have to dedicate to it, either on my commute or like extra to my commute. I feel like it's a weird thing to do, and I don't know if it necessarily helps my reading or sometimes like puts extra pressure on myself, like I'm trying to race myself for some reason. But in general, I find it helpful to know how long a book's going to take me to read. One thing that I do think helps me read quite quickly and has made me a faster reader is that when I read a book, I use a bookmark to go down the lines with. So say I were reading The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, I would start at the top of the page, and as I read each line, I would bring the bookmark further and further down, so the bookmark is always underlining the line that I'm reading. Basically, I have always done this for as long as I remember, and I didn't realise until quite recently that I did it because of an eyesight problem, because I have astigmatism, which means I find it hard to sometimes focus on particular things, which meant that whenever I looked at a page, unless I had a bookmark under the line I was reading, I would find that the line would kind of blur with the line below, and I'd sometimes lose track of where I was. The glasses I wear now have something to correct that in, so I don't actually need to read with a bookmark in the same way that I used to. And like now when I read on a Kindle, I don't often use a bookmark. But I do find having a bookmark to go down the lines helps me read a bit faster and helps me like always know where I am a bit more, and I still find it quite a useful tool, and I still do it all the time as I read. And I think that's probably all I have to say in terms of how I read quite a lot. I feel like I haven't said that much that is useful, but hopefully it will be interesting nonetheless. Like I said, one of the reasons why I read a lot is because I am luckily quite a fast reader, and I am grateful for that, though it also probably comes from reading a lot and doing English literature at university and working in an industry where I do have to read for work has probably increased my reading speed quite significantly. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say for today. Please let me know down in the comments if this video was useful, interesting at all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.